Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. The Attorney General in Israel has said the government's plans to overhaul the judicial system would gravely damage the country's system of checks and balances. Gali Baharav Miara said she was concerned about the principles of separation of powers, judicial independence and the protection of individual rights. But Israel's Minister for the Economy, Nir Barkat, speaking to the BBC, said many of the changes would align Israel's system with those of other democracies.
I'm a strong believer in democracy, and Israel is the only democracy in our region. And I'm telling you that I feel very comfortable with the changes that we have on the table on the democratic side and the balance of powers. And we're looking to be closer to our European peers. There are certain things that we put on the table that are accepted all over the world. And eventually, I believe we'll get an arrangement where we will be more like other countries in the world versus not.
The Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen says his country and Sudan will sign an historic peace agreement in Washington in a few months' time. Mr. Cohen said the text of the agreement was finalised during talks in Khartoum with Sudan's military leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Sudan agreed to normalise relations with Israel more than 2 years ago, but never signed the so-called Abraham Accords. A high-profile prisoner held at Guantanamo Bay has been resettled in Belize. Majid Khan, a Pakistani citizen who went to school in the US, had admitted working with al-Qaeda. Here's Neda Tawfiq.
He was captured in Karachi in 2003 and tortured at a CIA black site. This went on for 3 years, despite admitting early on to what he had done until he was transferred to Guantanamo Bay. He admitted to joining a plot to assassinate Pakistan's president and to delivering $50,000 to finance a deadly bombing in Indonesia. He was sentenced to 26 years in prison, but was given a reduced sentence as part of a plea deal for acting as a U.S. government witness.
Ilhan Omar, a high-profile Democrat and the first Muslim U.S. Congresswoman, has been voted off the powerful Foreign Affairs Committee by Republicans. They accused her of making repeated anti-Semitic comments. Speaking during the debate prior to the vote, Congresswoman Omar said the resolution made her more determined to keep speaking out.
I didn't come to Congress to be silent. I came to Congress to be their voice. And my leadership and voice will not be diminished if I am not on this committee for one term. My voice will get louder and stronger, and my leadership will be celebrated around the world as it has been.
Ms. Omar had been a vocal supporter of Palestinian rights. She's apologised for past comments that played on stereotypes of Jewish wealth and influence. World News from the BBC. A US government task force says it's reunited almost 700 children separated from their families at the Mexican border under Donald Trump's zero-tolerance migration policy. It was set up 2 years ago when President Biden took office. The task force said 1,000 children, or 1 in 4, were still separated, while over 2,000 had been reunited by the end of the Trump presidency. Under Mr. Trump's widely condemned policy, children were incarcerated separately from adults. Shares on US markets have risen sharply following better-than-expected results from Meta, the owner of Facebook. Tens of thousands of jobs have been axed in the tech sector in recent months as companies that grew quickly during the COVID lockdowns began scaling back. The BBC's Samira Hussain says Wall Street loved what Meta had to say.
They basically said that, look, we didn't do so well in this last quarter of 2022, but going forward, we have really big expectations for what the company can do and how much money it can make. And what it also did is it said, look, we are cutting a lot of costs absolutely everywhere. And they also did something else that kind of sweetens the pot, which is they gave their shareholders some money back. That's always going to sweeten the pot for sure. And Wall Street loved everything that they had to say because in trading today, their shares jumped by 25%.
Thursday is Groundhog Day, when many towns across North America wake up one of the large burrowing rodents from hibernation to try to divine whether spring is coming. But when the organisers of celebrations in Val d'Espère in Quebec discovered their furry weather forecaster had died, they carried on regardless, handing a toy groundhog to a child who predicted 6 more weeks of winter. If the rodent sees its own shadow, it will return to its burrow, which is considered a sign of an extended winter. BBC News.